Welcome back to the annual FS Flag Roundtable live from Midwest Bank of Western Illinois. We are glad to have our sponsors along. They include Yet Ford, OSF Holy Family, Farm King, City of Monmouth, Monsanto Agronomy Center, Big River Resources, and, of course, FS Grow Market, Midwest Bank of Western Illinois. Let's get back to our program, and we'll turn to Alan Adams with the Illinois Beef Association. We need to catch an update from what has been going on with beef, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. What have you guys been working on?
Well, of course, at the state level, our big news is that in our convention in June, we voted to reactivate the 50-cent voluntary beef checkoff. And so we are in the midst of a petition drive. We're just finishing that up this week. And so we think we have enough petition signatures to submit to the Illinois Department of Agriculture to get that to a ballot. And so we hope that sometime either later on this year or early next year, we'll have a vote scheduled for the beef producers in the state to decide whether they want to vote for or against a 50-cent voluntary beef checkoff. And the reason we're doing that, of course, it's one of the things that we've seen over the years, our checkoff receipts at the national level have declined with the declining beef population in our state. And so we've been left with a lower amount of total revenue, and then, of course, the purchasing power of those dollars has declined as well. So if we get this, one of the nice things about a state checkoff is that it gives us a little more freedom of action than the national checkoff. And in a national checkoff, you just have to talk about beef generically. You can't talk about Illinois beef. And so we think there's a lot of opportunities. You know, when you talk about local foods, I've always said that beef producers and livestock producers we kind of invented local foods. All of our members are selling cattle or hogs to neighbors and stuff. So local foods is nothing new. We've just never promoted it. And so those types of things where we could work with local processors in Illinois could be a really good thing. The other thing is we know that some of our ethanol plants will change their processes and eventually put out a little different kind of distiller's grains. We'll have the freedom to use some of that money for research also to try and help beef producers adapt to those different products. And education we can use for producer education. So that money can be put to good use in Illinois, and I think our checkoff directors will do a really good job of making that pay off for Illinois beef producers. And then on the policy, on the checkoff side also, our staff has done all sorts of new things. We did our first TV commercials that the Beef Association's ever done this year. And so that was pretty interesting. We put on, just before Christmas, we put on a series of commercials, and then also during May Beef Month. And then also during May Beef Month, we did something interesting. We tried our first digital advertising, which some people may know as our national beef checkoff has actually turned completely to digital advertising. And so now with that, our whole impetus is try to get as many Facebook likes as we can do for beef. And the good news is that our staff came to us in May and said, we want to do this, and we put a bunch of money in May. For the last several years, Houston has been the number one city in the country for Facebook likes on beef recipes. And wouldn't you know, in May, our Denver office of the NCBA was pretty excited to say, guess who shot to the top of the list? Chicago was number one due to the money that the Illinois Beef Association had spent on digital advertising. So it was kind of a neat thing for us to see how we could really put our money to use and really help beef producers in the state. So, and then the last thing we did, our checkoff directors felt like somehow or another we had to go to Chicago. You know, we have never been able to go actually into Chicago with a promotion. And so we've been once already cooking beef at the Chicago Area Runners Association 10-mile race in April.
I hope after they ran, right?
Hmm?
After they ran, right?
Believe it or not, we started the grill just before they started racing, and I can't tell you how many people came up to us and said, that smell made me run faster than you could possibly believe. I couldn't wait to get to the steak. They cleaned us all out. The beer vendor next to us said, you guys can drink all day for free because he'd never done that much business. And so we're going back in September for another promotion. And we thought that was a good demographic to try to hit. Yes, they're runners, but those, if you're disciplined enough to be able to run 10 miles in April in Chicago, that means you've been running all through the Chicago winter. They're bank vice presidents, they're account executives, they're people that we think will be influential in a lot of decisions. And so it worked out, past our expectations. So we just had a lot of great things happening at the Beef Association.
And real quick, this morning you heard Mike Adams touch on the issue with the importation or the allowing of importation of beef from Argentina. How does the NCBA feel about that?
Well, we've asked continually to Argentina and also Brazil in the past follow the same scientific standards that we have to. And, when it comes to mouth disease, it's the most frightening disease to us as cattle producers that you can possibly imagine. So if, you take a disease that has a documented aerial transmission of over 100 miles and turn that loose anywhere in the United States, and you're looking at devastation to the livestock industry that you can't possibly comprehend. And so I think we're just going to be demanding that those scientific standards be met before any of that beef ever comes into the United States.
And what about the country of origin labeling? Have you, obviously that lawsuit didn't come to fruition, so that looks like that's going to happen.
Well, the country of origin labeling is still being adjudicated by the WTO, and we know that there's a decision that will come out later this year. Some people have leaked it, and so they think it's going to go against the United States. We don't know at this point what that will be. Certainly as an organization, we haven't been supportive of country of origin labeling. My argument has been if a 500-pound calf comes across the Canadian border and then spends the rest of his life in a United States feedlot and leaves at 1,200 to 1,400 pounds, is that really a Canadian calf? He's put most of his, spent most of his life. And certainly the original arguments are that somehow consumers would differentiate between Canadian or Mexican beef as opposed to United States beef. We've had several years of that program. Those packages of beef are in the store today, and they're, from all accounts, there's been no differentiation. Consumers buy from stores they trust. They don't look for those labels.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alan. Wendell Shawman, you had some updates from the Grains Council perspective and some other information you wanted to share.
Sure. Go back to some of the earlier discussion. I guess comments from being around a long time and getting old. I've probably got the least hair of anybody in here. I don't know if that means I've been through more battles than others or not. Go back when Don talked about the LMFA, and he was in the legislature when this thing got created, I believe. And what a battle that was, and to get that thing done. But it's pretty widely respected. It's a tough set of rules, but you know what the rules are, and that's what's made it successful. But what gets me is it never seems to be enough. I mean, this was done 15 years ago, maybe a few more than that. I was in the Farm Bill Board. That was 14 years ago, so it's at least more than 14. And yet, it's been successful for that whole period of time. Very little criticism, and it was tremendously tough to get past with a lot of activists really coming after the livestock industry seriously. And it would have hurt the livestock industry in Illinois if we hadn't got that thing passed. And I guess my frustration is here it is, they're coming after it again. I guess my point is some of these things just have long tails. I was on an American Farm Bureau Federation Water Quality Committee again back in the late 90s. Met out in Washington with the Chesapeake Bay people, the people involved from agriculture's perspective, and they were telling me that you don't want to have to live with the rules and regulations that are coming at us. Well, and you talk to Chip Bolin, who I think is going to be president of NCGA, and he lives out there. And Chip Council, who's going to be one of our chairman of Grains Council. And you listen to what they have to put up with, and you know how in the world you could possibly farm. If you put that set of rules on the Midwest, it would just have to lower our production and the rules and regulations and hassles. And that stuff just keeps going on. So I guess part of my challenge is you got Jared and Katie and some of these people. We got a lot of people around here who've been involved for a lot of years. We need to get more people, young people involved, because this stuff's not going away. You need a bit of a history lesson, and you're going to have to keep fighting these battles. They just don't seem to go away.
Katie, he brings up a very good point. We've talked about this in other markets, about getting younger people involved in agriculture. Certainly from the college perspective, we're seeing more in the crop sciences and in grain market as well. But how do we get them more involved in just farming?
Well, I look at this a little bit differently because back home, I look at our neighbors, and our neighbors to the west have welcomed back both of their sons into their farm, and then neighbors to the south of us have welcomed back both of their sons. My brother is home farming with my dad as well. So I feel like maybe it's just in pockets, but people are coming back to the farm. And I think it's because there is this new, I don't know if it's new, but there's this increased interest in what is agriculture and what is farming, and people want that. They want to get back to the land. They want to be on the tractor, and so they're going to make it work. And there's programs out there that will help those beginning farmers do that as well. But certainly, and I think Jared can attest to this as well, that it's important for then those young people to be involved. You have to be involved in your community. You can't just work and go to sleep and wake up the next morning and call that home. Home is a place that you make, and you have to work for that. And so involvement in your community at your local level, but your state level and also your national level on issues that affect your business, which is also your livelihood, is incredibly important. And, I feel like it's just a continual outreach effort. Some people just need to be asked. And so you can just ask and invite people to meetings, whether it be a Farm Bureau meeting or a legislative update breakfast. We have one of those in our county next Monday, and I've asked a couple people to attend with me. Sometimes you just have to ask, and never thought of it before. And so, I don't know. It's just one of those things. We'll never find the answer to it, but we can always keep trying.
Okay. And I'm going to head back over here in just a second to my left. But, Troy, you had something you wanted to add from the Agronomy Center.
Well, not necessarily from the Agronomy Center. As a former ag educator, former high school ag teacher, it's kind of something that's a little near and dear to my heart. And these topics rile me up a little bit. And I starting to see a shift. I think we're starting to do a better job as an industry. But, and again, as an ag educator, I have a lot of these useless facts at my command. But if you look at over the last century, we've seen about a 300%, a threefold increase in water use efficiency in corn production. It used to take an inch of water to make 4 bushels. Now we can make 12 with that same inch of water. The last 30 years, about a 30% increase in nitrogen use efficiency. You go back to since 1970, we've reduced the amount of soil eroding into the Illinois River by about 85%. None of that happened because the EPA made us. Mm-hmm. It happened because farmers innovated, the ag industry innovated. We got better at what we did. We got more efficient at what we did. And we haven't told that story very well. We've let other people own that message. And I think that's why we find ourselves treading water to the extent we are today. And I'm glad we're doing things like this, and I'm glad we're doing more to get younger people involved in agriculture and get that message out, because it's really going to be critical, like these guys have said.
Jerry Buckle from the Farm Bureau, you have a program for young farmers.
Yeah, we have a young farmer, chairs that are on our board, and they're trying the best they can to fight that battle of getting people, my age, into what the Farm Bureau does and just even being active. Like we have a 5K coming up this Saturday morning.
Maybe Alan
You
can
can
come
still
and bring
sign up
some
for it if people can
beef.
come. Well, it is in conjunction with the Prime Beef Festival, and they're helping too. So I mean, yeah.
Alan, I
Great.
think next year.
They're-
You guys are grilling up steaks.
They're
During the Prime Beef
that too.
Festival.
With that. But no, I mean, we struggle with it, and we've had meetings and trying to figure out what to do. And there's some counties that are extremely successful, and we try to pull from those ideas. And it's just tough because people have a lot of excuses, and so we try to say, well, I have kids too. We can make this work, and it's an uphill battle. And we're trying to do the local farm family initiative here. As we did that food forum here this spring to kind of educate consumers too, and that's kind of gotten interest from the younger crowd also. There are a lot of moms that have husbands that are farmers, and they want to know more themselves. So,
yeah. Ron, didn't you guys have the fortunate luck of having a son come back and farm too?
Yeah, one of our sons came back to farm this spring. He worked 3 years in Chicagoland area in the horticulture business, and I really was surprised that he decided he wanted to come back to farm, because when he first went up there, he was really excited about working in the career that he chose when he went to college. And but I'm really happy that he's back. It's been a great pleasure to have him helping, and he still comes and eats lunch with us, but that's okay too. We're very, very happy that he's back farming, and he's one of those guys that wants to be involved. He was involved in a lot of outside activities in high school, and was involved in horticulture club and at Illinois State. So, I think he's once he gets his feet on the ground, I think, Jared, there's a contact for you.
Hey, tell him Alan's grilling those steaks at the 5K run he's in. Yes, Mark?
Farmer funds. The new Farm Bill had made an emphasis towards some of those funds. I look across the room here. I'm looking at a banker eye to eye right now. Is there some of those programs that work in connection with with your commercial lenders, where both of them can do some cooperation loans back and forth? So I want your listeners out there to realize too, sometimes funding is an issue. So take a look at the FSA office too for some of those funding programs.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Senator John Sullivan?
And just to follow up on that, of course, the state through the Illinois Finance Authority also has a young farmer program that has some low interest money available too. So it's I know that they've been very active and actually helped some folks.
Okay. Chris Gavin from Midwest Banks to talk to you, right?
Yeah.
And we'd like to welcome into our program now our U.S. Representative for the Illinois 17th Congressional District, Sherry Bustos. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate you having me.
How has your day been so far?
Well, we've been in Peoria. We're in the middle of a Make It in America tour, so this is just a good way to cap it all off.
It is. No better way to make it in America than be a farmer, right?
We grow it in America here, right?
That's So one of the things we want to talk to you about today is the WRDA bill. You were a part of sponsoring that, about the lost transportation. Tell us how that bill's moving through and some action that could be taken on it in the future.
Well, it's actually more than just moving through. It has moved through. So it's a rare piece of legislation in Congress where Democrats and Republicans have come together very peacefully, and we passed it overwhelmingly in the House. We passed it overwhelmingly in the Senate, and the President has signed it into law. And if I can give a little more background on it just so your listeners can understand, we can certainly have a dialogue here at this roundtable. But what it does is we have a locks and dams system, and in particular to our region along the Illinois River and along the Mississippi River, that was put in the Depression era. And our government has not adequately kept it up to date, has not funded the upkeep and the improvements that have been needed. And so we had to come up with an innovative funding source in a very tough environment where money's hard to come by. So what our bill does, and I'm the lead sponsor in the House along with my colleague Rodney Davis, and so just to give that as an example, we reached across the aisle. I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican. And in the Senate, Senator Durbin and Senator Kirk, Republican, Democrat, came together also. So I just think that's important to note that, when it comes to Illinois, we know how to do that. So what this does, it identifies there will be 15 pilot programs where they will be funded with a public-private partnership. And again, we have to look for innovative solutions to our country's issues. And so we're very pleased with the fact that this passed, that we are now in the process working with the state of Illinois to figure out who wants to invest in this, and we'll start identifying what those projects are. They will move along in a faster fashion than they would have otherwise under previous legislation, because the pretty much the groundwork has been done for this to move it forward.
Okay. And do we have any idea who might want to invest in this? What companies we might be looking at, or people?
Yeah, well, this has been endorsed by the corn growers, by the Soybean Association, by the local chambers. So we've got business support for it. We have agricultural support for it. I would see it as a pretty good return on the investment for something that is greatly needed in our country.
Well, I know you're making Wendell Shulman very happy. He's been bringing up locks and dams since this roundtable started years ago, right?
Yep. Right here.
And she mentioned soybean and corn. Ron Moore, of course, from the American Soybean Association. I'm going to turn things over to you and Rob Elliott from Corn Growers and our legislators for any questions and follow-up on this bill, but also the EPA waterways rule as well.
Well, thanks, Vanessa, and thanks, Congresswoman Bustos. We do very much appreciate your ability to get this, the public-private partnership passed through legislation and now signed by the President. That's, we've been working on this, like Wendell says, for 2 to 3 decades trying to get these lock and dams upgraded. And hopefully we'll get some companies like CG&B that are represented here, and some of the barge companies that understand that they can't move their products and do the work that needs to be done on the Mississippi River without some of their investments in it. So I think it's a great opportunity to work with private business to make things happen that we've struggled in the industry to get anything accomplished.
Yeah, it's very much an economic issue. When you're talking about 60% of the commodities move along the Mississippi River, and for us, it's critical in order to be able to get the commodities to market. And if we don't come up with solutions for this, it's just going to slow down that movement, and it hurts the profitability of our businesses and our family farmers.
And I think one thing that doesn't get talked about too much is that agriculture is an economic driver of this state. And when agriculture is successful, everything else that is involved with agriculture, whether it's a manufacturing, whether it's the transportation industry, they're successful as well. And so when you have a project like this that encourages success to happen, it's a great thing.
Well, and ag is the #1 driver in our entire state, and certainly in the 17th Congressional District that I represent. It was, very clear to me when I was elected to Congress what committee I wanted to serve on. And the reason I had lobbied and was successful at getting on the Ag Committee and also the Transportation Committee is because the two complement each other so well, and again, are good for our #1 economic driver.
That thing is the Inland Waterway Trust Fund pays for some of those infrastructure improvements. I think there's been a proposal that it would up the barge fuel, I will say fee, I won't use the word tax, but I think the barge industry has said, yeah, we're part of it, and I think the grower base has said, we'll chip in too. What do you think the possibility is we allow that tax fee, whatever you want to call it, to increase to help with that funding?
What I find interesting about it is you've got an industry that is basically saying we are willing to tax ourselves in order to improve what is very important for us from an infrastructure perspective. That has not been brought up for a vote. Frankly, I don't know if the political climate is such where the leadership in Congress is going to bring that up for a vote. If the word tax is attached to something, and you can call it a fee or you can call it anything you want, but if the word tax is attached to it, the leadership has not had a tendency to bring that forth for a vote. So I can't say that I'm overly optimistic, at least in this congressional session, that will go any further. You hear a lot of people out in Washington say, well, wait till the lame duck session. So in other words, after the November 4th election and then before the early January swearing in, that there will be a movement on some measures. But I have not seen that on the list.
Senator John Sullivan, I know you had some legislation you wanted to talk about.
Well, and I'd like to kind of follow up on the word of progress, and certainly thank you, Congresswoman, for your work and efforts on that, and really glad to hear the bipartisan support, because we both know how important that is, and legislators in the room know how important that is as well. I thought it was, I think one of the reasons, my understanding is that the reason you were finally able to push this across the line is because of that public-private partnership aspect of that. And the state of Illinois did their first public-private partnership this last year with the Ileana Expressway. And you asked, Vanessa, well, who would actually fund that? Who would actually do that project? And up in on the Ileana, it would actually be the contractor, one of the construction contractors, bringing in developers and investors, if you would, along with the support of the state. In this instance, it would be the federal government, and then they would all. That's the public-private partnership that would actually could actually do the work and begin the jobs. And begin the construction, and also wanted to mention, obviously, the construction jobs that would be created by those upgrades on those locks and dams would be tremendous, as well as, of course, the need for the infrastructure. So, just wanted to say thank you to Congressman Bustos for your work on that.
Thank you, John. And this will put people to work, and it'll put local people to work in good jobs, construction jobs, engineering jobs, and improving something that greatly needs to be improved. So, yeah, I don't think we can do things the way we used to do them. It's not a matter of just saying, oh, yeah, we'll increase the tax, or we'll just grab some more federal money that just isn't out there anymore. So we're going to have to look for these innovative approaches, and I applaud you and your colleagues for getting that done for the Ileana project as well.
Yeah, thanks.
And Vaughn, real quick, you talked earlier about the challenges with the rail movement of our grains. Can you remind us about what that is so we can have a chance to catch Sherry up on that also?
Sure. One of the things that American Soybean Association is working on, along with the WER bill and the public-private partnership on the Mississippi River, is the rail issues in the upper Midwest tier states. North Dakota oil boom has put a lot of strain on the rail systems up there. The farmers up there are not able to get last year's crop even moved to market, let alone worrying about this year's crop. They're having difficulties getting LP gas in to run their dryers this fall. Burlington Northern has ordered 500 new engines, but they don't have enough track and to handle both the grain that's going to be coming out this fall plus all the oil boom activity. So that's an issue that I know the Senate Commerce Committee in the House or the Senate is having a meeting next week, and the Surface Transportation Board's had a hearing on the issue here recently. So that's one of the things that ASA is working on. It's important that those farmers in the northern tier states.
Yeah, and that is just emblematic of our overall infrastructure and what we need to address as a country. You know, it was the Eisenhower administration that put in the interstate highway system, and again, we have not kept pace with making improvements particularly over the last decade. As an example of the infrastructure needs, the Highway Trust Fund was scheduled to be depleted this month. And one of the last votes that we took before members of Congress went back to their home states was to extend that through next spring. Well, you know, those aren't the answers for long-term planning. So whether it's rail or whether it's waterways or whether it's highways, bridges, roads, airports, we have to invest as a nation in our infrastructure. Everybody sitting around this room where you rely on the movement of goods to make your livelihood, that requires an investment in our infrastructure. And I think as a member of Congress, we're going to be faced with some tough decisions on exactly how we're going to make that happen, but we're going to have to make those decisions.
Okay. Thank you very much. And you know what? Let's also just get some information from you and some updates from you. What's coming up this fall and what you guys have been working on from the Agriculture and Transportation Committee. I mean, the water bill was a lot, so what's next for you?
Well, for between now and Election Day, which is November 4th, Congress is in session a total of 8 days. Okay, and so I need to say I do not control the schedule. I will say on behalf of, I guess every member of Congress, it shouldn't be that way. We should be doing the country's business. We have a lot of tough decisions and a lot of tough debates that need to take place. We have a lot going on in the world, not just here in our own country, and the tough decisions that need to be made about infrastructure and making sure that the Farm Bill is implemented and those rules are being carried out the way they need to be carried out. But, we have a lot of issues going on in the entire world, and there are 8 days of session. So I wish I could sit here and say we will balance the budget. We will we will have a 5-year highway bill. We will implement all of the rules that came out of the Farm Bill. But, I think that's probably a tall order in 8 days. But